Right, my name's Joe Stead. You can follow me on Twitter and stuff in the bottom right if you can see it, Joe_Stead. Please do. We're going to talk about .NET Core in the real world today. A little bit of an interesting twist on kind of a bleeding edge technology. We're going to talk about using it in a legacy project, which comes with lots of fun challenges and twists and things like that. Just a quick show of hands, has anybody used .NET Core yet? Except the people I work with. Cool, that's fine, good. In which case, hopefully this is going to be good for you, everybody. If you'd used it before, sorry. But you haven't, so it's fine. So let's get down to it. Right, so first thing we're going to talk about is ASP.NET Core. Now, if you're here to learn about ASP.NET Core and the new kind of MVC web API stuff, I am going to disappoint you and say that is not what I'm talking about. Yeah, right. Thanks for coming. It was good seeing you. Enjoy your beer. But no, that's not what we're talking about. Sorry. So if anybody's here for that, sorry, but hopefully you'll still take something away from it because it's a little bit more than that. So ASP.NET Core is kind of more the MVC web API, Microsoft web stack stuff. There's a bit of Kestra in there too, which is the web server. Really, really good. We'll talk about that a little bit. But it's not something I've done much with. It's not something I have much interest in. And it's kind of not really for me. However, if you're using an ASP.NET MVC kind of project at the minute for your stuff, that is worth checking out because it should be relatively straightforward to port over. The routing and stuff like that may be a bit different, but for the most part, you're kind of good to go because it's Microsofty. So the reason we're not going to talk about ASP.NET Core so much is the big chunk of our project isn't actually web-facing. The main part of it is a kind of a back-end server system that does magic and does all of the heavy lifting of our application. So we have a little bit of web stuff, but it's not really the meat of the product, if you like. And the bit that is web-facing is using NancyFX, which is an alternative web framework, really lightweight, really, I'm not trying to get this right, super duper easy, happy path stuff is their tagline. Anyway, it's really easy and quick to lightweight to get up, and we'll see a bit of that later. But that's why we're not talking about ASP.NET Core because of Nancy, basically. So I know next to nothing about ASP.NET Core, maybe not completely nothing. I know a bit about Kestrel, which is the really, really quick web server. Really quick, check it out if you haven't. So yeah, I haven't even used ASP.NET for about 2 years now. So I'm sorry if you want to ask me questions about that. I am going to disappoint all of you on that front. Just so we've got that clear. So let's talk about what .NET Core is and what I'm actually going to be talking about. So you may have seen around on the internet and things like that, things like .NET Build. Can everybody see this? Nope. I realise now the colours are terrible. Who would have thought? So I'll stand this side. We have .NET Build, .NET Restore, .NET Test, Publish. I do know them. I can't remember the order I put them in. And .NET, what is going on? So you may think, well, .NET Core is about a CLI. We can do it all from the command line. That's not what it's about. It's part of it. That's a big chunk of it. But that isn't what .NET Core is. Could you call it a framework? Yeah, kind of, pretty much. So we're going to talk about that side of thing, the framework side of .NET Core and how that fits together with the existing .NET framework. So there's a lot more to it than just it being a framework. It's not a package of kind of libraries that you can pull into your code base and use. It's so much more. So let's go on an adventure. Come with me on an adventure. So
next Doctor Who.
That's it for the Doctor Who jokes, by the way. So it's fine. Right, so a little sidestep from .NET Core. We're going to talk about .NET Standard for a second. And you may be thinking, what has this got to do with anything? Story time. So, does anybody here know what a PCL is, or a portable class library? Quick show of hands. Yeah, so a few people know what a portable class library is. So portable class libraries, for those who don't know, were or are a way of targeting different frameworks or different platforms with the same code. So if you've got like a standard logging library, for example, and you've got an ASP.NET app, you've got a Windows service, you've got a Xamarin iOS app, things like that. You want to have logging on all of those, yeah? But as a library author, I don't want to write different kind of packages and libraries for each one of those things. I want my code to run on all of them. So that's what PCL was. And it was a little bit flaky and a little bit hard from a kind of an author point of view. As a consumer point of view, you didn't really notice. But it was a bit of a pain. So .NET Standard is like version 2 of that, if you like. It's a build-up on that. So, quick disclaimer. I'm not going to talk about .NET Standard 2.0 for the simple reason Microsoft announced this back in August, September time, I think, and they've reneged on a lot of the stuff they already said. And given this is the week of Microsoft Connect event, it's probably changed already, like in the past 10 minutes. So I'm not going to talk about .NET Standard 2.0, which is the upcoming version. I'm going to talk about .NET Standard now. So we've got a little diagram, and can everybody see that? Lighting isn't great. Can everybody not see that? If you can't, shout and I'll read a diagram to you somehow. Okay, good. So the point is we've got things like Xamarin, .NET Core, .NET Framework, and all your different app models, so like WPF, Xamarin, iOS, Android, ASP Net Core, UWP, any Universal Window Developer people in? Shocker, nobody is. We've also got the common infrastructure, so we've got the compilers. So Roslyn is still Roslyn. It's still a compiler for C# and VB. Languages, still got C#, F#, and things like that, and the runtime components like garbage collector, and the jitter and stuff like that. That's all the same. What's different is this middle bit, the .NET Standard library. And that is, again, it's a way of writing one bit of code that does all of this and works with all of this without having to actually worry, which may seem pretty cool. You may not seem to care if you just do ASP.NET and it runs on Windows all the time. You might not care, but you probably will at some point, and I'll show you why, because we're going to go to a different diagram. So this is what .NET Standard is. So like Portable Class Library, you can target a specific set of .NET Standard. So instead of targeting like Silverlight and .NET 4.5, for example, you'll target a specific version of the .NET Standard. So this makes it a lot simpler and a lot easier to understand. So if you wanted to support as much as you possibly could, you would write your library to support .NET Standard 1.0. So you would even get support on there for Windows Phone Silverlight. Does anybody know of anybody who's got a Windows Phone that runs on Silverlight or any Silverlight developers? Brilliant. Good. That's great. So if you wanted to support everything, go for 1.0. So that sort of thing, you don't need to worry about many dependencies externally. It just kind of going to work. It's like attributes and things like that. If you want to support .NET Core, you'd have to kind of support .NET Standard 1.6. But the caveat is this is all backwards compatible. So anything that targets 1.5 will work on things that run on 1.6. So .NET Core runs on 1.6, which means all of the things before it will run on it. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, so if you wanted to support Windows Phone Silverlight, and I don't know where you would, and .NET Core, you would have to support .NET Standard 1.0 in your library. But if you wanted to support just .NET Core, only worry about 1.6. Makes it a little bit simpler, and the compilation and things like that, it kind of works. You don't have to worry about it so much. It's a much simpler model. There is another column here for 2.0 that I trimmed off because they keep changing it. Honestly, I don't know. So what is .NET Core? Going back to pulling it back. So it's kind of like a .NET runtime, if you like. It supports F# and C#. Do we have any VB devs in the room? I'm so sorry. So Visual Basic isn't supported yet. It's coming, but there are other languages.
We use C#.
Okay, brilliant, good.
Also, I'm looking to use VB as well.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Visual Basic is coming to .NET Core. It's not there yet for reasons that not many people use it now, I guess. So they're focusing effort elsewhere. I don't really know the reasons, to be honest. It's cross-platform, which is a real deal breaker, and that's one of the main reasons we use it on our legacy project. So we're supporting OS X, Windows, and Linux systems. That's a killer. Linux systems are a killer. Microsoft love Linux, right? And SQL Server runs on Linux now, so who cares about Windows? So it's like .NET Framework-ish, but they've changed a lot of the framework. So like reflection and things like that's moved around. The API is a little bit different. So the biggest difference that I've seen, because I absolutely love using reflection, is the type class. Completely different. And things are kind of more external dependencies, and it's more modular, if you like. But the absolute killer for me, and I really cannot stress this enough, are the flexible deployments. So I guess the majority of you are developers, am I right in saying that? Who here cares about how you deploy your software? Just quick show of hands. Okay, the majority of you, that's good. But everybody should, because that's the important part. That's how we all make money. If you don't deploy it anywhere, nobody's going to make any money, right? So you're all .NET developers as well, I take it. If not, this is going to be a little bit alien. Good. How many of you have ever faced an issue where you've tried to deploy your software somewhere and you haven't had the correct .NET runtime installed on that server or that client machine or whatever? Quick show of hands, anybody? And how many of you have thought, what the hell is going on? This worked on my machine, it was fine. I'm sure the majority of you. So the killer thing about .NET Core is flexible deployments. So we can package up all of our dependencies with our distributable. So if you're targeting .NET Core 1.0, for example, you don't have to have that installed on the server, on the client machine or whatever. The thing you ship will run with all of that, including the jitter, including all of the other stuff, including everything you need to run your application without having any external dependencies. Now you might say, well, we use an installer anyway, so it doesn't matter. We install .NET 4 or 5 when we ship our application. But what if there's a newer version on there? What if there's an older version on there? What if you install a newer version that breaks another system because they're kind of working on some weird bug that happened on .NET 3, for example? That could be a killer. So being able to package everything you need without breaking other things in isolated sandboxes is really, really important to us. The flip side to that is if you have a suite of products that all want to run off .NET version 1.0 or 1.1, you can install it globally as well. You've got the flexibility to do that. So if you say, well, we've got 10 different systems, because, you know, microservices, but all on the same machine, so value, don't know. But let's say you're doing that for whatever reason. You can install it globally, and it will just work. It's fine. You don't have to worry about packaging up, so your kind of deployments will be smaller at that point. So you've got the flexibility there to do what you want to do and deploy how you want to deploy, and having complete control over your deployments. Does that make sense to everybody? Doesn't it make sense to everybody? And I'll try and clarify it a little bit. Good. So, why are we using this on a legacy project? And the simple answer I'd say is, well, why not? Code is code, looks the same. C# is C#. I've got my methods, I've got my classes, I've got my interfaces, I've got my structs, and all the other things. I don't need to tell you what code is, you know what it is. It looks the same and it reads the same. So I, as a developer, can develop C#, and I know what C# is. I know that class is going to be a class. I know how to do up a class. I know how dependencies work, things like that. Is that fair to say that everybody knows what C# is, or whatever language you use, and it doesn't matter what target you're kind of running on? The difference is it doesn't actually run the same. So if you think about how your code runs, it's going to be different on every single processor, on every single operating system, on everything. So if you're running on a phone, you've got different considerations. So if you're running on a server to a consumer PC, they're all different and it all runs differently. So you need to keep that in mind to a certain extent of, well, my code it kind of works on Windows, but it's a little bit flaky on Linux for some reason or whatever. And that was something we saw. So we were running mono for our application. The simple reason being, we are not a business critical application, so companies don't have to use us to keep their business going. But it's kind of quite important, I guess. So we can't say to a big bank such as, HSBC, I don't know if they're a client or not, I don't think they are, but let's take that from them, for example. They've got a massive kind of infrastructure background, and it's all Unixy and Linuxy. We can't say, install Windows Server and you can use our product, because they're just like, no, we'll use something else. That's ridiculous. So we need the flexibility of being able to target what our customers are using, because we haven't got the clout to say, just go on, put a Windows Server in, retrain your ops guys, get that in. That's an issue. So we went for mono originally, and that had a few issues. We were seeing things like, I'm going to get this wrong because I'm not a Linuxy person at all, but let's go for it. Kernel faults, seg faults, that kind of thing. Weird issues with the networking stuff where the application was just dying for whatever reason. We had no idea why. It was something on the operating system level combined with mono, and we didn't know what was going on, and it was a pain. So we ditched that when .NET Core came along to move on to the bleeding edge, because that's going to be safer, obviously, than running on something that's been established for 15 years. So that's what we did, and we got some speed benefits from it and stability. So it's kind of more broadly used and kind of in the limelight right now. So people are talking about it. So if we saw an issue, chances are somebody else was seeing an issue, and there was more kind of willingness to get involved in resolving these issues. And preservation. And what I mean by that is kind of about 5 or 6 different things here in one word. So our project, or our product, I guess, is about 15 years old now. We've got some .NET 1.0 stuff in there. We've got some .NET Core stuff in there. We've got, some, throughout the years, it's gone from kind of 1.0 to not having link, to having tasks, to things like that. And the code has evolved over time. So by having that on mono all the time, it's like, well, is it keeping up? Can we use tasks yet? Are they supported on mono, aren't they? That's kind of an issue. We've also got the flip side of that is, who here as a developer, does anybody work on web forms and absolutely love it?
I work on them, I don't love it.
Good, because I'm about to state web forms, so that's good. Thank you. So who here as a developer would say, I'm going to go for a new job, but it has to be web forms because it's an old technology that I absolutely love and I'm not touching anything else. I'm so glad nobody said yes to that. But if you said, well, we're on the bleeding edge, this is really, really good, I want to use this, is that more attractive to you as like a potential developer joining a new product? It was attractive to me, I know that much. So it's it's kind of a few things. We're kind of preserving the code, making sure it's running on the latest runtime. It makes us more attractive to people maintaining the code going forward as well, because people do come and go. And the flip side to that as well is, I forgot what I was going to say. Hey! And the flip side to that as well is another point. Never mind. The flip side to that as well is, if you've got a library that supports .NET Standard 1.6, for example, but you're on old .NET, but you really want to use it because it's really, really cool, but you can't because you're stuck behind on an old kind of code base, you've got the flexibility to use that. So I'm not saying jump on the latest trend all the time, because that is going to kill your business, in all honesty, because you'll just be playing catch up the whole time. But to have the flexibility to see something cool and new come out and be able to use it without having any issues, other than kind of teething issues to the product itself, that's quite important, I think. So you can keep up to date with the new technology. You can talk about like HTTP2 kind of push server stuff and not have to worry that our code's so old that it might not work. There's that flip side to it as well. That's the point that I forgot. Little sidestep. Does everybody know what left pad is? Yeah. So everybody knows about, was it this year? Left pad killed NPM for a day. And that broke a lot of stuff. So I think that's important to talk about for a few reasons. First off, it was pulled from NPM and thousands of dependencies broke, which means a lot of companies weren't able to deploy their software because NPM install just wouldn't work. First thing I'd say to them is, why aren't you mirroring your dependencies? This is kind of your fault. Second thing I'd say is, well, it's quite clear that we depend on a lot of third-party external code that we don't actually have control over. So what's the relevance here to .NET Core? Let's pull that back a bit. Well, when we were porting a legacy project over to .NET Core, we saw that a lot of our dependencies weren't ready to go yet. They weren't ported. Some of them still haven't been ported. And that was an issue for us. So some things we just couldn't use that have been in our system for 10 years. It's like, well, we want to move over to .NET Core, but we're stuck. So how do we get around that? So one of the main things we didn't have is runnable unit tests up until a few months ago, because our mocking framework wasn't running .NET Core. So not having unit tests, changing a legacy product. Like, I'm still quite new at the company. I can tell you how I was feeling making these changes without knowing if I'm breaking anything. It wasn't comfortable. It really wasn't. So we kind of have to work with the community a little bit and get these things up. So the way we fixed it is quite simply open source. All of our dependencies are actually open source. But, I mean, I'm sure the same applies to you as well, but how many of you have actually gone onto GitHub and submitted a pull request, raised an issue? Quick show of hands. So I'd say that's kind of the minority of the room, maybe 50-50. So those who haven't, like, shout out answers. Why not? Has everything just been perfect for you? Anyone shout anything out? The answer's already there? Yeah, so you found a workaround, you found something else that works. Have you ever thought wouldn't this product be great if it could just do this instead, then it would be perfect? And then you thought, I'm not going to make it perfect though, because I haven't got time, I've got to work on my actual system, I've got time to work on this third-party stuff. But the thing is, that third-party stuff is part of your system. It's just as important, you should care about it just as much. So I think it's important. So we as a company actively contribute to the open source community. And I mean actively, like we just do. We even hired a third party to work full-time on a product in the open source world. So we hired somebody earlier this year to work on Nancy full-time. And they port that to .NET Core for us. Now you may think, well, that's a very expensive way of doing it. You've kind of paid somebody however many thousand to do something. But if you waited long enough, it would have happened anyway. You could have done it for free. But the flip side to that is, because we've paid somebody to do it, we've got it now, it's out there and other people are running it. So people are testing our product for us without even realizing. So we're looking at the repo, we're seeing the issues that are coming, we're in the Slack channel, people have got issues with the .NET Core version. We're seeing that without our customers seeing it, without us seeing it. And we know that that's something we have to fix or something to be aware of, that we can't do certain things with it. So we get that, I would say for free, but we paid somebody. We're getting that through this. So by contributing to the open source community, we're getting a lot back. So a little mantra, if it's broken, fix it. If you're using an open source package and it doesn't quite work, you do some kind of weird behavior and you get an exception, it destroys everything, raise an issue, have a conversation, fix it. If it's not quite right, discuss it, make it right. It's not just you who's using this, it's a lot of people for popular projects. So, get involved is what I'd say. And on that, I'm going to do a demo. So, again, disclaimer, yesterday at the Microsoft Connect event, they changed a few things. So some of the stuff I'm going to demo is a little bit different, a little bit out of date. So here we go. Let's see how this goes. This is terrible to see. It's really dark. Can anybody see anything?
No.
Good, there's nothing on the screen. Can anybody see the thing at the bottom where I'm typing?
Yeah.
Cool, good. So we're going to start a new .NET project. And we've created that. So you can kind of see, this is Visual Studio Code, by the way. You can kind of see I've got program.cs and yes, I want all of that, and yes, restore my packages. So let's collapse this. This resolution's terrible, sorry guys. So can everybody see the code, which is hello world? Yep. Cool, so I'm going to run that. And I'm on OS X, by the way. So I'm just going to type .NET run. And because everything's black, you can't see anything. But it says, oh, if I highlight it, hello world at the bottom, which is our code. So that's our code running on OS X through .NET Core. How easy was that? I hope your applications aren't any more complicated, because that's as good as it gets. That's not really. So we can use some stuff like runtime information, if I can remember the thing, which I probably can't. No, I can't. But I cheated. Oh, I have removed them. Go away. Git command, anybody? Clearing stage files that I don't want.
You said head hard?
Yeah, I've done that.
I didn't see the head.
Ah,
Do a git status for us.
the golf was there for a reason, okay?
Can't not see that.
Yeah, that's git clean.
Get clean.
Is that even a thing?
Git clean dash d dash f
Dash-
f dash x.
What?
Git clean dash
Get
f.
yourself up there, lad. Get yourself up there.
Dash F.
Get yourself up there. Go on.
Come on, man. No, don't actually. Dash F dash D dash X.
X, yeah. Thank you.
Cool, yeah, that's worked.
That's not quite what I was said, but that's fine.
It hasn't destroyed my branches, at least. So I wasn't going to do a demo until I realized half my talk is now redundant, so I thought I need to fill it out with something. So I just did this yesterday, so sorry. So go back to program.cs. Yeah, okay. That's all I wanted to do. Runtime information. I was on the right track. So yeah, we can get some framework description about what we're running on here, and this is exciting as it gets. It really is. So if we run that, we'll see something a little bit different. And again, it's .NET run. It's going to build it for us, and it's hello from .NET Core, and then a version number. That's that. Amazing, right? So we've got C# 6 going on. So we've got our string interpolation. So we're running on the latest stuff. It's not C# 5. It's not an old version of .NET, whatever. The same old, really. We've got a main method that you'd see in any console application. You've got, you know, whatever you want, really. It is just C#. This is what I mean. Code is code. This should look familiar to everybody. Does it not look familiar to anybody? Maybe the BB dev? So it is just standard C# code. I try. It's just standard C# code is the point of this. But it's a little bit boring. So let's move on to something a little bit more interesting. I hope. Just, okay. Cool, right, so. What we've got here is a little bit of magic. So we've got some web post builder using Kestrel, which is IntelliSense, which is a web server, which we talked about briefly. Really, really, really quick, like super quick. If you want performance and you want to use .NET, look at Kestrel. Honestly, it's quicker than light. That's a lie. That's a lie. You can't measure the same things the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a quick Nancy application. So again, this is just kind of standard setup stuff. We've got like a host.start and then some stuff to make sure we kill the application. And that's pretty much it. We haven't got anything else, okay? So what we're going to do is a .NET run. and that's going to build it for us, it's going to run it for us, and you probably can't see that anywhere because it's right at the bottom, but we've started an application running on port 6969. So if I go to our browser, and we refresh, we get a 404.
Way.
Hey! So we're running a web server, essentially, in our console running from VS Code on OS X. And it just kind of works. And the same code, by the way, would run on Windows and Linux, and all I'd have to do is .NET Run, and exactly the same thing would happen. You'd get this lovely 404 page, which is powered by Nancy. Cool. Has anybody used Nancy before, by the way? I get to demo Nancy at least, yes. So we're going to create a quick module. So we'll do a new C# class. So a module in Nancy is like a controller in ASP.NET MVC or Web API, whatever. So we'll do API module, and we'll do dot. We'll do .NET restore, because I don't think I have. Well, no, I must have done. IntelliSense isn't working. Excellent. Get rid of our parameters. Cool. Define our root, and then we're going to do no, I don't want get type, I want get. So one thing to point out is I'm using the wrong thing. It's Nancy module. One thing to point out is I'm an idiot. So we're going to stop that and rebuild it. So what we're doing here is we're saying when a request comes in for the root, just kind of return hello. So if I restart that, hello, hey! So that's kind of pretty much as complicated as the demo. No, it's not really. We're going to go a little bit more. So we're going to show off some more stuff, which is kind of like part of Nancy, part of ASP.NET and things like that. So we're going to create another class, which is going to stick it there because I don't want to create a new file. I'm going to call it a name generator. And we're going to have a method on that which generates a name. It's a terrible name, I know. And we're going to have that as a dependency in our class. And then we're going to be able to call it. Make that public so it's happy. And then we're actually going to have some proper names as well, because hello is not a name, in case anybody didn't know. Private. Rick.
Carl.
So we're going to have some names, and then we're going to kind of return one of them randomly. So return so we're using link, and this is just going to hopefully work, which means it's not using system.link, using system. Good, cool. So if we run that now, cool, start the application, we'll refresh. Summer, Jerry, Morty, Rick. Yeah, so it's giving us a random name, which is essentially what we told it to do, generate a random name, or have an array, order it by good, cheated. And that's giving us a random name. So kind of get that kind of dependency injection thing for free in Nancy. And something I can tell you about ASP.NET Core, you get it for free in that as well. So hey, free dependency injection, don't have to worry about it, don't have to wire anything up, it just kind of works. I would wire it up anyway, just so you know what's going on. Magic stuff is scary, don't have magic stuff. Just advice.
I was just about to ask, how did you inject the
Yeah, no, it just works. So in our program.cs, we have our startup class, which is your standard kind of thing. We're using Owin for this, which is old. You don't have to use Owin now, but we're talking about legacy, so Owin is legacy, yeah. And use Nancy, you can put some configuration up here to use like a different bootstrapper and things like that. So this is your standard startup class that you'd see in most applications. It's changed a little bit, but yeah, dependency injections for free. Cool. Do you want to see some more stuff? Yeah. You can say no if you want, I'll stop. See some more stuff. What branch do we got? Let's make sure I've got everything here. Every time.
Does that BI have a default convention for interfaces then? Because that were a class.
That is a class. Yes. So my argument to that would be, why do I need an interface?
Well, if you were going to unit test that, and a unit test has an interface rather than the concrete implementation, so you can actually like stub calls to it, because that could be.
Yep. So I would disagree with that quite vehemently, I'd say. So it depends on your definition of a unit, but I would say if we're just testing mocks all the time, where's the value? Why are we not testing code outside of one method?
It depends what the interface is doing, but that was just the question.
Yeah, so you can do if you want to, and an interface would inject it the same way, but I would say you don't need to.
I'm just saying, does it have a default convention for the dependency injection? Because usually you'd create a convention that said bind the default interface to the default class implementation, which would be, my class to my class or whatever like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you can do that if you want to. But, I mean, the only time I'd really, really want to do that is if I was unit testing a database or something that goes to an external service where I don't want to go to the real thing, so that then becomes an integration test. For the most part, though, I'd actually want to use the real code. So I think this is really opinionated, but you've kicked me off on it right now. I think putting an interface and everything is completely redundant if you're just doing it for testing purposes and things like that. That's just my opinion. There are a lot of people out there who will argue it much better than I will, so I'm not going to get into that too much.
That's what the class is doing. You can't just.
Yeah, no, it's
something that's immediately disagreeable, because
no,
you could have some actual real logic in there that you want to stub out.
Yeah, so it is a blanket statement. I'm aware of that. But to do it for everything blindly is something that I see a lot, and that's something I disagree with. But no, I agree. There are cases where you do want to mock things out and stub things out, absolutely. But not everything is what I'd say to that.
No, yeah, I'm not saying.
Yeah, cool.
So it basically just calling with the default instructor for any arguments, it's not been supplied hard.
Say that again, sorry?
Is it basically just calling with the default constructor for the injected?
Yeah, so what if like name generator is another dependency or that?
Yeah, so it'll trail down. So if name generator's got dependencies, it'll find that dependency and register it. It's just like your standard. Imagine configuring an ISV container and you get to scan assemblies for all the types and register all of those. That's essentially what's just happened in the background. Yeah, we just scanned all of the dependencies and registered them. Yeah. Again, I wouldn't actually recommend doing that for real things. You see some funky results sometimes, and it's good to know what's going on. It does, however, mean you get huge classes sometimes for your dependencies, but that's a philosophical debate for another time, I think. So let's just check out to make sure I didn't miss anything. I think that's all I was going to do on that anyway. Oh no, that wasn't what I was going to do. I was going to introduce some tests as well. So we're going to have, can everybody see the Solution Explorer thing on the right? Yeah, like the Super Web project, which is our name generator thing, superwebproject.tests. So we've now got two .NET Core applications running side by side. You'll notice there's no solution file or CSproj files. They're coming back as of yesterday, so thanks Microsoft. So this is a little bit different to what you'd see if you downloaded .NET Core 1.1 and the alpha tooling and things like that. But the thing to remember is this is just tooling, it's not the runtime stuff. So the fact that CSproj is coming back over Project JSON and stuff like that shouldn't really bother you guys, because it's a little bit of a hindrance for you as a developer, admittedly, and it is, trust me. But for the kind of the benefits that you get from consumers running this on their platform and things like that, they don't see that the project system's changed. They don't see any of this. All they know is it's going to run, and it does. And that bit, it still works. It's the important thing, I guess. Cool. So now if we go to our test thing, here are some tests I wrote earlier. By earlier, I mean yesterday. So if we close this side. So you'll see here we've got some tests. I'm using XUnit. Anybody used XUnit? Anybody used NUnit? It's like NUnit but with an X. It's not really, it's a little bit different. I don't know if NUnit's been ported, to be honest, but it's the same kind of thing. You have your test, or in XUnit land, a fact, and you do some stuff, and you make some assertions, and the test runner will run it. Okay? So if we switch products in OmniSharp, and I've had a little bit of a structure. So if we go to the tests directory, we can do .NET test, another one of those commands I listed that nobody could see because of the lighting. And it will build it and it will run our tests and it's going to discover them and everything went wonderful. So it's the same as what you'd see anywhere. There isn't a fancy GUI, but that's just because I'm using VS Code. If you wanted to use Project Rider, you could see all your tests light up and go green and things like that. If you wanted to use Visual Studio, same thing probably, I don't know. I'm on Mac, I can't. But it's just like running your tests. Sorry? Yes, you have Visual Studio for Mac, which is Xamarin Studio rebranded, and that does stuff, but that was also announced yesterday, so don't ask me about that. Thanks. But one of the important things to remember, so keep in mind I'm on OS X, and you may think, well, debugging must be a pain. You're just kind of putting this through a command line tool and it's all working, which is essentially what I've been doing so far. If I stick a breakpoint on, can anybody see my mouse or anything? No, not really, okay. Well, I'm going to debug this test here, which is name should not be a number. Great test, like, absolutely great test. This is how all your tests should look. Named like that, run like that, asserted like that, because it's just guaranteed to be perfect, especially when the subject is random results. So we're going to step through things, and that isn't going to work. Yeah, and we're going to step through things, and we're going to see what the debugger is giving us. So it's just like Visual Studio, really. And in Visual Studio, you would have the Visual Studio debugger, and you can see things go through. Can anybody see this on the right? So the result is Joe, because I've obviously changed it in this branch. And we're going to assert that Joe isn't equal to 1, and it's not, so that's going to pass. And it's honestly just the same. Like I said, code is code. It's just how it's running is different. But for the most part, you don't see how it runs. You're still writing C#, you're still writing .NET. You're still consuming the libraries and packages you know, except it's running differently. That's the important thing. Yeah? Cool. Just F5 through that. If we go to the name generator, this is, I include myself in the list, that's why it's different that time. But otherwise it's exactly the same, and I pulled it out into a different file. So we've got structure just like you'd see in your standard projects. You've got controllers or modules just like you'd see. It's all kind of the same, really. Startup, you'd see that. It's a web thing, I know. Features, home module, name generator. One cool thing Nancy does, by the way, is content negotiation. I'm not going to show you this, but actually, no, I will show it. So in my test for this one, index should be OK. This is all Nancy, by the way, this test stuff. I'm configuring a browser, and it's going to make a request for me. So I'm saying, all right, I want this module or controller, the home module. I'm going to register a dependency explicitly, because I'm going to test, not the actual system. So I'm not going to scan assemblies, because that'd be really slow. Because I want the name generator, I want the home module, and then I want to make a request to my browser to this kind of resource, kind of the slash, which is what we saw when we registered the root. I'm going to say, with the accept header, application/JSON. Now that's quite important because we've got content negotiation on. So I could change that to application/XML and it'll just kind of work. They might say, well, I want that for free, I want that explicitly. It's like, you land into some tricky situations when magic stuff happens, you don't know what's going on, would be my argument to that. So if I run this application now, so if I should jump out to that, .NET run. So we go back to here, we can refresh, what we're going to see is a 500, because it's trying to find a view for me. But I've not registered any views, it doesn't know about views. So that's not going to work. Whereas if I request JSON or request XML, which my browser doesn't do, by the way, well, it can do, but I've not told it to, that's not going to work. If I made an application/JSON request to that, it would work. In fact, let's do it. Going off script, I'm a madman. Cool, clear that. So if we go to localhost 6969 with the header accept application/JSON, send that, get Rick. I know that's not really JSON because it's just a string. I could have made that an object, I cheated. Get over it. And if we do application/XML, it'll do it in XML, I guess. Yeah, there we get XML. That's actually XML, so I didn't cheat that much. But if we go just for the standard view, the browser's going to request our HTML. It's like, well, I don't know how to serve it up, so you're not getting it. 500. Kind of what I'd expect. I could write some more code, but I'm not going to. Back to the slides. Does that make sense, everybody? Was anybody amazed by it? No. Well, this is awkward then, isn't it? So my point is that I'm trying to make is it is just code running code. And yeah, again, the demo was a very last minute thing, so like I could have gone into more depth or less depth. But the point is, it's just code. I could have showed you the project JSON stuff, which is what I was going to go into in a little bit. That's all changing, so there's really no value to that. So with that in mind, I will say, is it worth it? Should I do it? Questions you may want to ask me. Should you convert your legacy project, your greenfield project, to .NET Core? Should I use it? Is it worth what it pays back? I don't know. I can't answer that question. That's up to you to make that decision. All I can tell you is what we've done and the experiences we've had with it, and it's been great. We have come up with some issues with kind of some weird debugger stuff. So we've raised issues with the team, and it's around date times and something to do with bytes being allocated incorrectly on certain offer. I have no idea. And like the entire like compiler team for .NET Core Roslyn stuff got involved on GitHub, and we were just like, all we want to know is why it doesn't work. So you do come across some weird issues, but it tends to be the issues with the tooling rather than the runtime itself. The runtime itself is actually quite stable, very stable, really stable. The tooling itself is still finding its feet. Okay. And with that in mind, we'll take questions in a second, because the video people asked me not to do this slide until everybody clapped. So with that in mind, we are done.